Most people think probiotics are just for digestion, gut health. But specific bacteria in your gut can have a powerful effect on the rest of your body, on your metabolism, on your immune system, and even on how your brain functions. Here's the key. Not all probiotics can do this. Not all probiotics are the same. You ever go to a drugstore, huge wall of probiotics, it's really music, hard to know what to choose. I want to talk about 3 specific healthy bacteria that you can get as probiotics. 39 trillion out there. 3 are standouts that I want to talk about today because they've been studied in humans with beneficial effects. This is not nice to have. This could be must-have. Could be a difference between life and death. Let's start by talking a little bit about bacteria, because when I went to medical school, I was taught that bacteria are bad because bacteria cause disease. Well, it turns out that most of the bacteria that we encounter in our lives are beneficial, and these bacteria are partly responsible for our health. And more than a century ago, a Nobel Prize-winning scientist named Ilya Monikov observed that people who were eating fermented foods like yogurt, specifically, he was looking at Bulgarian monks who seemed to get really, really old and healthy all at the same time. They lived longer, healthier lives. He proposed that the reason that they were able to live longer and healthier is because they were eating beneficial bacteria in their yogurt, and that was responsible for their longevity. So that is a little bit of history, goes way back. All right, but modern science gives us an explanation of what might be going on. So let's talk about that, because we can now identify specific strains among those 39 trillion bacteria. We're just at the tip of the iceberg, where we're beginning to identify specific strains that can be beneficial. And once we know these strains, we can grow them up. We can study them in the lab. And we can also study their effects in humans as well, particularly when you can actually make the bacteria into probiotics. That's really important. This is an entirely new frontier of modern medical research looking at the microbiome. Now, from all this, we're learning something really important, which is that not all probiotics are the same. You ever go to a drugstore or a health food store and you look at a huge wall of probiotics, it's really hard to know what to choose. And they're all different. The strains, the dose, how it's manufactured, okay? And whether it's been studied in humans. These are all factors that are very important to consider when you're trying to identify a probiotic that you want to take. Does it have a meaningful effect? All right. And just like any product you want to put inside your body, quality matters. You want to know that you want something that's high quality before you actually put it inside your body. So if you're considering probiotics, okay, it's very important to understand something about the bacteria. Are you getting the right bacteria, the healthy bacteria that's in there? It's important to know the manufacturer. Does the person, does a group, does the company making or selling this a probiotic? Do they have a good reputation? Are they transparent about how they actually produce this probiotic? Have they had a warning issued to them from the FDA? These are really important things from a safety perspective. And in knowing the bacteria, knowing the quality of the manufacturer, you want to know, does it work? Is there any clinical evidence that it works? This is what I always go for. I look for the human evidence. So let's take a look at 3 specific bacteria. Surveillance is patrolling your body like a cop on a beat patrolling a quiet neighborhood. I'll make sure everything is fine and looking if there's any signs of trouble. Okay, trouble in this case in your body are cancer cells, microscopic cancer cells that might be growing and lurking around. Akkermansia talks to your immune system and helps your immune system conduct that surveillance to look for the bad guys. Okay, very important. And by the way, when you actually need your immune system ramped up against cancer, Akkermansia plays a role as well. Going to talk about that in just 1 second. But first, can you grow your own Akkermansia? The answer is yes. Akkermansia thrives when you eat certain foods that contain polyphenol called elagitanins. These elagitanins, which you find in foods like pomegranates, Concord grapes, cranberries, and walnuts, for example. Okay, food is medicine. These elagitanins help prompt your gut to secrete more mucus, which the Akkermansia eats, which then stimulates more mucus, which protects the gut and feeds more Akkermansia. Okay, and basically this is one way that you can grow your own Akkermansia. You can eat foods that will support it. Now, how did Akkermansia enter really the limelight? Well, it's basically from cancer researchers, and the research on Akkermansia cancer is literally jaw-dropping. In fact, when I heard it, my jaw dropped. All right, one of the world's leading researchers on this, Dr. Lawrence Zipogel in Paris at the Institut Gustave Roussy, was studying cancer patients being treated with immunotherapy. This is not chemo. These are cancer treatments that rely on your own immune system, activate your own immune system to go after the cancer. So it's you treating you in a way. It's kind of the most natural way to snorts to defend and treat cancer. And what she found is that those patients, cancer patients who had higher levels of Akkermansia in their gut were more likely to respond to treatment. Okay, and those who didn't, right? So this is not nice to have. This could be mustave, could be a difference between life and death. What type of immunotherapies for those of you who are interested in this? Specific immunotherapies have been studied called checkpoint inhibitors. All right, immune checkpoint inhibitors. It's a class of immunotherapy. I will do a separate video about immunotherapies at some point. But again, Akkermansia is a critical gut bacteria that helps our body, our immune system, ramp itself up so that when you get immunotherapy, specifically checkpoint inhibitors, it helps your immune system go after the cancer. Really important. We're not done yet with Akkermansia. Akkermansia does another thing. It affects your metabolism in a beneficial way. It produces short-chain fatty acids called propionate. That's when the short-chain fatty acids, or SCAFs, produces this metabolite. And guess what? That gets converted into another metabolite called butyrate. And butyrate is really important. Butyrate in your gut, okay, which is made from propionate, which is made by Akkermansia, all right, which you can grow by eating foods that feed it, okay? Or you can get a probiotic that will actually do that. The butyrate actually stimulates your body's own GLP-1. Now, you've heard of GLP-1. It's a hormone that regulates appetite, helps natural weight loss, and also can help your blood sugars normalize. So, Akkermansia actually can help your body produce its own natural GLP-1. Same pathway that is controlled by medications like Ompic and Goy, the GLP-1 agonist, but your body can activate this pathway in its home. Not the same way or the same potency as a drug, but Akkermansia does the job by itself. Now, food is medicine. So, you know that you can eat these foods. Pomegranates, Concord grapes, dried cranberries. I say dried cranberries because whole fresh cranberries are really tart. You're probably not going to want to do it unless you add a ton of sugar to it, and I don't. Lactobacillus plantarum. Now, this is a probiotic as well. Okay, it's a member of a large family of beneficial bacteria called lactobacilli. Okay, in fact, it's one of the best-known healthy bacteria strains. You can almost certainly find Lactobacillus plantarum in your whole yogurt. Okay, now there's a lot of different types of lactobacillus. All of them have their own kind of superpowers in the gut for your health. But specifically, Lactobacillus plantarum has been shown to have some very specific benefits. Number one, it supports the gut environment. And by the way, when you have it as a probiotic, it'll support stomach acid. You eat it, it will make it all the way past your digestive enzymes into your lower gut, which is where it's going to do its job. Now, this is where things get exciting, because Lactobacillus plantarum has been shown to produce a new substance that was discovered called plantarizin. Plantarizin clears throat, is a natural antibiotic that can modify and help shape the makeup of your gut bacteria, right? Antibiotics kind of alter the bacterial makeup in order to make your gut overall healthier. So here's a bacteria that produces an antibacteria, an antibiotic that then shape-shifts your gut bacteria. So the neighborhood is overall healthier. Where else do you get Lactobacillus plantarum besides yogurt? Well, you can find it often in fermented foods like sauerkraut, kimchi, fermented olives, which is a traditional Greek way of actually preparing olives to eat. But this video is about probiotics. I want to tell you about a specific strain of plantarum called PS128. Lactobacillus plantarum PS128. Because this strain specifically as a probiotic has been studied and has beneficial effects on brain health, which I think is really amazing. So clinical studies were done by researchers where PS128 was given to people who had Parkinson's disease, and what was really remarkable is that those patients with Parkinson's who took PS128 had clinical improvement. Lactobacillus plantarum PS128 seems to have a benefit. How does it work? We're still trying to figure this out. What we think PS128 does is that it improves the dopamine pathways. This is the reward pathway, but the movement pathways in the brain, and it lowers brain inflammation at the same time. More dopamine, which is what you need for Parkinson's, and less inflammation, which you want to have anyway. And we also think that Lactobacillus plantarum activates the vagus nerve. This is one of the largest nerves in your body, connects your brain to your gut. And we know that this is actually one of the telephone cables where your gut bacteria sends text messages to your brain. So we think that this probiotic PS128 has beneficial effects that go way beyond the digestive benefits and general gut health, but specifically can actually have an effect on brain health. This is kind of targeted biology. We're still understanding the targets, but I think it's really exciting. And so, here's a common bacteria you can get as a probiotic that's been studied to improve brain health. Third bacteria, probiotic, Lactobacillus reuteri. Reuteri, R-U-T. This is another member of the Lactobacillus family. I've done research on Lactobacillus reuteri myself, commonly found in the human gut microbiome. But once antibiotics were developed, actually it started to become less common. Also changes in the modern diet, and this is the bacteria that we actually want and need, but it's becoming less and less present. So targeted probiotics means that we can actually restore this particular microbe that we might not have enough of. Good news is that you can find Lactobacillus reuteri in your food. Okay, not in huge quantities, but you can find in your food. Food is medicine. Which ones? Well, you might be surprised. Fermented foods like yogurt sometimes will have it. Sourdough made with Lactobacillus reuteri. Okay, and by the way, some traditionally aged cheeses like Parmigiano Rio will also have some lactopoo. You get better metabolism, better glucose utilization, less inflammation, stronger immunity, can also even help brain signaling to help the brain produce the social hormone oxytocin. And by the way, L-Reuter is also good for gum health. Now, gum health, your teeth sit in gums. Gum health is not only important for dental health, but it turns out we now have realized that when your gum health isn't bad, it's actually linked to heart disease and brain disease as well. All right, neurodegeneration. So good gut means starting your mouth. Good gums means good heart and good brain. Really, really important. So you don't want to have gingivitis, which is inflammation in the gums, and Lactobacillus reuteri can lower in gum inflammation and improve overall gum health. In fact, randomized controlled clinical trials conducted in Europe and around the world show that Lactobacillus reuteri is actually a good targeted probiotic for lowering gum inflammation, for improving plaque on your teeth, and reducing bleeding from the gums in people who have gingivitis. So how does this work? Well, remember I told you about Lactobacillus plantarum producing an antibiotic? Well, guess what? Lactobacillus reuteri does the same thing. Produces its own natural antibiotic called reuteri. Amazing, right? Bacteria produces an antibacterial. What that does is that the good bacteria produces the antibiotic that suppresses the harmful bacteria on your gums, and it allows our body to rebuild a healthier ecosystem. Sounds pretty complicated, but really quite remarkable as well. Okay, so the next time you hear somebody talking about probiotics, you know the question to ask them. What specific bacteria are you talking about, right? Some bacteria can influence your immune system and how it responds. Some can influence your metabolism, and some can even influence how your brain functions. And that's the concept of targeted probiotics. It's not just a shotgun. Good for your digestion. We're REA. So how does this work? Well, remember I told you about Lactobacillus plantarum producing an antibiotic? Well, guess what? Lactobacillus reuteri does the same thing. Produces its own natural antibiotic called reuteri. Amazing, right? Bacteria produces an antibacterial. What that does is that the good bacteria produces the antibiotic that suppresses the harmful bacteria on your gums, and it allows our body to rebuild a healthier ecosystem. Sounds pretty complicated, but really quite remarkable as well. Okay, so the next time you hear somebody talking about probiotics, you know the question to ask them. What specific bacteria are you talking about, right? Some bacteria can influence your immune system and how it responds. Some can influence your metabolism, and some can even influence how your brain functions. And that's the concept of targeted probiotics. It's not just a shotgun. Good for your digestion. We're really beginning to take a look at specific bacteria with specific clinical outcomes. It's kind of how we do drug development, but we're now using healthy bacteria, in that analysis. Still a lot more to learn. There's still emerging data on Akkermansia, Lactobacillus plantarum, and Lactobacillus reuteri. I have not told you everything because we don't know everything yet, but I've given you enough clues about these 3 bacteria that you can get as probiotics to give you a head start when it comes to thinking about what kind of probiotics should you consider. Now, if you want to stay ahead of the science and learn about how to use food and the microbiome and healthy bacteria like probiotics to support your health, make sure you subscribe to this channel. I will keep bringing you the latest evidence and show you how it applies to your health. See you in the next video. Hey, if you like that video, then you're going to love this one. Check it out. Crafts.